President Trump goes off on China, demands payment for damage caused by COVID-19. On Saturday, President Trump gave a speech at the North Carolina GOP. Between quips about Joe Biden's failures and hints that he may return to the White House, Trump focused his energy on China. And he wasn't holding back on his desire to make China pay for damages caused by COVID-19. He told a roaring crowd that the time has come for America and the world to demand reparations and accountability from the Communist Party of China. We should all declare within one unified voice that China must pay. They must pay. Watch for yourself.
But Fauci has perhaps never been more wrong than when he denied the virus and where it came from. The time has come for America and the world to demand reparations and accountability from the Communist Party of China. We should all declare within one unified voice that China must pay. They must pay.
Friendly fire. Even the mainstream media is mad that Kamala won't visit the border. Recently, Vice President Kamala Harris sat down with the friendly crowd at the Today Show, but things got rough for her when the conversation turned to the southern border. Months ago, President Biden put the VP in charge of handling the border crisis. Now, months later, she's solved nothing. In fact, she hasn't even been to the border. When she tried to misrepresent her travel, saying repeatedly, "We've been to the border," Lester Holt called her out, and it wasn't pretty. The clip is now going viral on conservative Twitter. Here it is.
Just quickly put a button.
Okay.
Do you have any plans to visit the border?
At some point, we are going to the border. We've been to the border. So this whole thing about the border, we've been to the border. We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe. And I don't understand the point that you're making. I'm not discounting the importance of the border.
Well, I mentioned it because I know Republicans have certainly come at you on this, but Democratic Congressman Cuellar has a border district has said to you and the president, come. You need to see this.
Listen, I care about what's happening at the border.
Tucker Carlson destroys Kamala Harris for border comments. This week, Kamala set the internet on fire when she told the Today Show's Lester Holt that she just doesn't get the point everyone is making about her refusal to visit the southern border. "I haven't been to Europe," she told him, followed by the least likable laugh there is. Tucker Carlson wasn't letting her comments slide. His Tuesday night monologue was nothing short of a total takedown of the vice president. It's a must-see. Watch now.
Do you have any plans to visit the border?
At some point, we are going to the border. We've been to the border. So this whole thing about the border, we've been to the border. We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe. And I don't understand the point that you're making.
I've never been to Spain, but I kind of like the music. I don't understand the point you're making. Of course she doesn't understand the point. No one ever asks her real questions. When was the last time that happened? Tulsi Gabbard was probably the last person to do it. And in the almost 2 years since, Harris has continued to ascend. How'd she do that? Well, purely on the basis of how she looks. Meanwhile, because it is so improbable that someone this unimpressive has become so powerful, the people in charge are forced to assure us, almost with hysteria, that she is brilliant and impressive. In order to prepare the rest of us for her inevitable march to the White House, they've had to create a Soviet-level cult of personality around her. And we're not exaggerating. Look around. The LA Times, which was a news organization at one point, announced that Harris was getting her own section in the newspaper. That is news dedicated exclusively to Kamala Harris. Readers get their business news, their international news, and then their critical Kamala Harris news. She's now her own category of news. The paper called the news section Covering Kamala Harris. Not surprisingly, the first dispatch from the LA Times' new Kamala Harris Bureau didn't focus on her policy accomplishments. That would have been a pretty thin section. Instead, the paper covered the way she looks. Quote, Kamala Harris is all kinds of firsts. The first woman of color, the first black woman, the first mixed-race woman, and South Asian elected to national office. So in other words, what really matters about Kamala Harris and what should matter to you, according to the New York Times, is her DNA. It's really kind of a science project. Disney went further than that. Kamala Harris, Disney explained to your kids recently, isn't actually a political leader. She's more than that. She's like a god.
Once there was a young girl who used her voice to make the world around her a better place. Some say the odds were stacked against her, but her mother had big plans for this little flower who had freedom fighting in her blood. She led a successful protest so kids could continue to play and became part of a divine group of leaders. She rose to places that no woman had. From front lawn activist to Madam Vice President. She will use her voice to run this nation and inspire it too. Kamala Harris, making her story.
Kamala Harris. Next time you see someone walking across the top of your swimming pool, it's probably Kamala Harris. She became part of a divine group of leaders. Divine in the literal sense, like the Dalai Lama or Kim Jong-un. She shot an 18 in her last round of golf.